The story begins in the middle of the night in Georgia. Former Navy SEALs Michael and Russell sit down with Russell's ex-cop brother Gabe to discuss their next job. The mission is risky. They must steal a safe deposit box from a bank. Inside the box is important information connected to a powerful Jewish-Russian mafia boss. The three men quickly realize they will need help from corrupt police officers to pull this off. Soon they meet with two officers, Marcus and Franco, and together they start building a plan for the robbery. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a Russian crime boss named Irina meets with two of her men. The men arrive with their latest victims locked inside the trunk of their car. The victims have clearly been tortured. One of the criminals presents Irina with a bag filled with all of the victims' teeth. Without any emotion, Irina throws the bag back into the trunk before it is locked again. 2 weeks later, the robbery team prepares for the job. Inside a van driven by Russell, the gang puts on their masks and checks their weapons. Russell parks the van around the corner from the bank while the other four rush inside. They immediately fire shots into the air, forcing everyone to panic, and the guards are quickly brought down. The alarms are already ringing, which means they only have 3 minutes before the police arrive. During the chaos, Gabe notices the bank manager trying to escape. He chases him down and captures him. To force the man to cooperate, they show him photos of his house and his family, making it clear they know where he lives. They take the frightened manager to the vault and show him the number of the safe deposit box they want. After the manager pulls out his keys and places them into the lock, Michael suddenly pushes him aside so he can open the box himself. While this is happening, Gabe notices a pile of cash nearby. Temptation gets the better of him, and he secretly stuffs some of the money into his bag before they finally grab the box they came for. On their way out, they lock the vault door behind them and toss the keys back to the manager. Gabe is the first to exit the bank and rushes to hide in a nearby car, while Russell guides him through the police radio scanner, telling him which route to take. When the other three robbers come out, Michael places 2 flashbang grenades on the bank door. The explosions force everyone inside to run back into the vault to hide. The trio then joins Gabe in the car, and they speed away while Russell continues guiding them through the police scanner. For a while the escape goes smoothly. But suddenly the security dye pack hidden inside the stolen money explodes inside the bag. The car instantly fills with thick red smoke, making it almost impossible to see. Desperately, they try opening the doors to release the smoke. In the chaos, they slam into another vehicle and cause a crash that blocks the road. Russell ends up getting separated and left behind. The thieves jump out of the car and start firing their guns to scare people away. One man stubbornly refuses to leave his car, so they shoot at his window until he finally runs. From a distance, Russell watches everything unfold and notices a wounded woman lying nearby. That was never supposed to happen. After stealing another vehicle, the thieves activate a bomb inside their previous car and drive away before it explodes. Soon the police arrive at the scene, and Russell quietly leaves the area as well. Later, at a secluded location, the group dumps all their stained equipment and abandons the car. Marcus and Franco angrily confront Gabe for stealing the money, explaining that it was obviously bait meant to trigger the dye pack for foolish thieves. Franco even pulls out his gun during the argument, but Michael calmly threatens him until he lowers it. Once the argument ends, they shoot the gas tank of the escape car and set it on fire before leaving the area. Later, Michael arrives at a meat-packing plant, where Irina's men are loading victims into refrigerated meat trucks. Michael hands them the safe deposit box, officially completing the job they were hired for. At the same time, Detective Allen arrives at the bank to investigate the robbery. He angrily scolds the bank manager for posting too much personal information on social media, which likely helped the criminals target him. Meanwhile, Allen's nephew Chris, a former Marine, arrives at the police station for his first day on the job. Soon after, Marcus also arrives. He notices he still has traces of dye on his shoe and pants. The commanding officer assigns Chris as Marcus's new partner. Marcus complains about it, but the order is ignored. The two patrol the city together, but their shift mostly involves dealing with small and embarrassing incidents, like a woman behaving inappropriately in public. Back at his apartment, Michael uses a burner phone to call Franco and tells him they will meet again in 2 days. After finishing the call, he places the SIM card in the microwave and burns it. Later, Michael returns to the meatpacking plant. Irina's men search him before allowing him to see her. Suddenly, a young boy named Felix runs up and hugs Michael. The moment reveals that Felix is actually Michael's son. Michael demands his payment for the robbery, but Irina calmly informs him that another mission must be completed first. When Michael refuses, Irina threatens that he will never see Felix again. While Irina explains the next job, Michael notices something alarming: a room filled with federal agents, silently watching everything. Later, Irina calls her husband, the Jewish-Russian mafia boss who is currently locked in a Russian prison. When she tells him Michael is refusing the mission, he becomes angry and tells her that such disobedience is unacceptable. He advises her to hurt Michael to make him cooperate. That same night, Russell receives a call from Michael asking him to meet immediately. As Russell sits inside his car, one of Irina's thugs suddenly appears from behind and suffocates him with a plastic bag. Meanwhile, Michael, Franco, Gabe, and Marcus meet together. They argue about Irina refusing to pay them. Michael also tells them about the federal agents he saw, warning them they must stay careful. At that moment, they suddenly see Russell's car crash into a wall. They rush toward it while another car speeds away from the scene. Inside the wrecked vehicle, they find Russell barely alive, the plastic bag still over his head and his body covered with terrible injuries. It is clear he doesn't have much time left. Gabe becomes furious, but Marcus holds him back. To end Russell's suffering, Michael quietly shoots him. Michael then tries calling Irina using the phone of her sister Elena, who is also Felix's mother. However, both women refuse to answer. Meanwhile, Detective Allen and his partner Detective Trina review security footage of the robbery. From the way the thieves moved, they conclude that some of them clearly have military training. The next morning, Michael's group gathers again to discuss the new mission, a heist at the Department of Homeland Security. The problem is timing. They will need at least 10 minutes to complete the job, but police response time is usually only 3 minutes. Franco then proposes a shocking idea. They should perform a 999. A 999 means killing a police officer, which would trigger a massive emergency response and send every available cop rushing to that location. Marcus strongly objects to the idea of murdering a fellow officer, but Franco shows no hesitation and says he would gladly do it. In the end, the group realizes this may be their only option. Later, Marcus and Chris respond to a disturbing crime scene. A car is burning, and 3 severed heads have been placed on top of another vehicle. Franco is also present at the scene and treats Chris like an inexperienced rookie. Chris quickly proves him wrong by translating a threatening message written on the glass. Afterward, Chris goes to question a group of gang members. One of them, Luis, insults him and suddenly tries to attack. Chris blocks the attack, subdues him, and arrests him. Soon other officers arrive and begin arresting the rest of the gang members as well. Furious about the earlier incident, Marcus pulls Chris aside and angrily scolds him for complicating things during the operation. Sometime later, Elena brings Felix to Michael's house for a scheduled visit that Irina had allowed. However, they arrive late, and Michael immediately realizes that Irina is responsible for the delay. The following day, Michael drops Felix off at Irina's place. Taking advantage of the moment, he confronts her and angrily yells at her for having Russell killed. Irina remains completely calm and unbothered, simply reminding Michael that he still has a job to finish. Later, the group meets again, this time inside a sauna. During the discussion, Marcus reveals the target for their 999 plan. According to him, the victim should be Chris, because Detective Allen would mobilize the entire police department if something happened to his nephew. When they leave the meeting and head home, Gabe finally admits that he hates the plan. He says he cannot accept the idea of killing a random man who has done nothing wrong, and he desperately begs them to find another solution. Michael suddenly snaps. He coldly tells Gabe that they have no other choice, and then angrily pushes him out of the car. The next day, Detective Allen meets with a woman involved in the naughty business. He bribes her with some money and asks for information. Eventually, she tells him that a working girl named Leah had taken too many uppers, and in that state she accidentally revealed a secret. Her boyfriend had recently committed a bank robbery. At the same time, Marcus and Chris enter gang territory. While Marcus talks with some locals to collect information, Chris notices 2 teenage gang members and tries to lecture them about their lifestyle. He tells them they should go back to school instead of living this way. Soon after, The two officers secretly begin following a criminal known as Termite, who is the main suspect behind a recent murder. They watch as Termite cleverly pretends that a bag of illegal powder is a baby, pushing it around in a baby carriage so nobody suspects him. He then hides the bag inside a car before driving away. A short time later, Chris gathers a team of police officers to search Termite's apartment. But before they can even enter the building, Termite suddenly opens fire on them from the window. The officers immediately fire back while rushing up the stairs. As soon as they break down the apartment door, Termite shoots at them again before running into another room to avoid their return fire. While more police surround the building, the officers search the apartment and find Termite's baby lying on a bed. Then they open a closet and discover a hole in the wall that leads directly into the neighboring apartment. Inside that hidden space, Termite had stored security cameras and illegal goods. However, Termite himself is gone. The team runs downstairs, but suddenly Termite appears again and opens fire before running away. The officers immediately chase him through the streets. As they run, other gang members, including Luis, begin firing at the police in order to help their friend escape. This distraction allows Termite to hide inside a car, where he begins shooting at the officers as well. A chaotic gunfight erupts in the street, with bullets shattering car windows everywhere. Some officers manage to scare several gang members into running away, and they chase after them while Chris and Marcus continue exchanging gunfire with Termite. Suddenly, a gun falls to the ground with no bullets left, so Chris comes out from his hiding spot. But this turns out to be a trick. Termite actually has a second gun, and he quickly shoots Chris. After that, Termite manages to escape. Marcus rushes over to check on Chris, only to realize that he is still alive thanks to his bulletproof vest. Marcus then runs after Termite, but he loses precious time when he gets stuck in a fence during the chase. Once Chris recovers, he joins the pursuit as well. Eventually, he finds Marcus and Termite struggling over a gun. Chris waits for the perfect moment and then shoots Termite in the head. Even after that, Marcus angrily shoots Termite again, releasing his frustration. Termite's death quickly triggers a riot in the area, forcing more police officers to arrive and arrest numerous gang members. Meanwhile, Michael meets Irina at a restaurant, expecting to see Felix there. However, Irina calmly informs him that Felix will not be coming. Instead, she hands Michael her phone. On the screen, Elena and Felix are seen enjoying themselves on the beaches of Tel Aviv. Michael barely has time to say a few words to his son before the call suddenly ends. Irina had done this deliberately, simply to remind Michael who is in control. She then gives him detailed information about the Department of Homeland Security building and informs him that they only have 24 hours to complete the job. She also warns him that the success of the mission will determine how long Felix stays away on vacation. Meanwhile, Gabe becomes extremely depressed after his brother's death. His grief pushes him deeper into his addiction, and he spends more time with Leah. Later, Chris and Marcus are relaxing at a naughty club with several other officers when Gabe suddenly approaches them and asks Marcus if they can talk. At first, Marcus pretends to cooperate and walks outside with him. But once they are alone, Marcus suddenly pushes Gabe down a set of steps and begins punching him while angrily scolding him for approaching him in front of other police officers. Gabe tries once again to argue against the plan. He reminds Marcus of the man he used to be and insists that Marcus would never agree to kill an innocent cop. Hearing this truth only makes Marcus more furious, and he punches Gabe repeatedly. At that moment, a suspicious Chris and another officer step outside. Gabe asks Marcus if Chris is the target, but Marcus immediately forces Gabe to leave. When Chris demands to know what just happened, Marcus lies and claims that Gabe is simply an informant he sometimes uses to gather information. Meanwhile, Detective Allen follows his lead and searches Leah's house. During the investigation, he even consumes some of the powder he finds there. Using fingerprints found at the house, the police are able to identify Gabe in their system. They learn that Gabe once worked as a police officer for 3 years before being dismissed after a questionable shooting incident. Later, Allen sets up a fake dealer in order to catch Leah when she tries to buy more uppers. When Leah arrives, Allen takes her into his car and pressures her while consuming her drugs. Eventually, she reveals information about Gabe. Soon after, Trina begins secretly following Gabe. She eventually sees him parking near Chris's house. Trina immediately informs Allen, and he calls for backup. As police sirens echo through the streets, Gabe quickly jumps over a fence in order to escape. Alan rushes to Chris's home to check on him and his family. He shows them a photograph of Gabe and asks if they recognize the man. At that exact moment, Alan receives another phone call with new information. The report reveals that Gabe had a brother named Russell, who worked with a man named Michael as private military contractors. Both men had once been suspected of arms smuggling for the Russian mafia, but the case was eventually dropped after 4 witnesses mysteriously disappeared. This discovery connects them directly to Irina, and Alan's captain immediately orders them to go after her. Later, Franco calls Michael and tells him that Gabe is now under surveillance, suggesting that Michael should deal with the problem. Moments later, Gabe hides inside a hotel room, trying to stay out of sight. Suddenly, he receives a disturbing picture on his phone. The photo shows Leah, badly wounded and tied up. Gabe calls the number attached to the message and discovers that Michael has kidnapped her. Michael threatens Gabe over the phone, warning him that Leah will be killed if he doesn't disappear immediately. Terrified, Gabe promises that he will leave town. Once Michael hears this, he hangs up the call and throws the phone into a toilet before leaving. The next day, Alan learns from Trina and the other officers that Gabe has disappeared. Michael hasn't been seen at his apartment for several days, and the courts have denied their request for a surveillance warrant against Irina. The news frustrates Alan so much that he snaps at the team and demands better results. Sometime later, Franco and Michael sit inside a van parked outside the Department of Homeland Security offices, waiting for the right moment to start the operation. At the same time, Marcus takes Chris to an abandoned building, claiming they are going there to meet an informant. The building is extremely dark, and when Chris enters one of the rooms to search, he suddenly realizes that Marcus is no longer in sight. Chris begins searching through the building to find his partner. At the same moment, Luis secretly enters the building carrying a gun. In another room, Marcus experiences a breakdown, overwhelmed by guilt over everything that has happened. Meanwhile, Chris continues searching through the dark halls and suddenly encounters Gabe, who tries to quickly explain the plan. But Chris refuses to listen and repeatedly orders Gabe to put the gun down. Just then, Luis discovers them. Gabe quickly warns Chris, giving him enough time to move away and hide right before Luis opens fire. After shooting several rounds, Luis escapes by jumping through a window. Chris comes out of hiding and discovers that Gabe has been shot in the neck. He immediately calls for backup and begins shouting to get Marcus's attention. Marcus finally arrives and instantly realizes what has happened. Without hesitation, he raises his gun, planning to kill both of them. Gabe notices this and fires his weapon as well. Marcus and Gabe end up shooting each other at the same time. Chris then opens fire and finishes Gabe off. After that, he checks on Marcus and realizes that Marcus does not have much time left. Chris then calls the police station again and announces the code, 999. Soon after, Michael and Franco hear the 999 alert on the police scanner and begin moving forward with their plan. They drive the van to the building entrance. When a security guard tries to stop them, they immediately shoot him. After that, they tie the injured guard to a railing and enter the building using the password Irina had provided. Inside, the two move through the facility and knock out 2 more guards using electric shotgun shells. These guards are also tied up, and the duo prepares several explosives. Meanwhile, Alan hears Chris's 999 call and assumes his nephew is in danger. He orders the entire police station to mobilize and begins driving wildly toward the location. Soon he receives another call reporting the robbery at the Department of Homeland Security, but he believes Chris's situation is more important and continues racing toward him, even crashing into other cars along the way. As the calls about the robbery continue, Alan eventually sends a small team to handle the Homeland Security situation. Back inside the building, Michael and Franco have strapped explosives onto the captured guards, using them as human shields while moving through the facility. Other guards spot them but cannot react because even a single bullet could trigger the explosives. The criminals force the guards to cooperate, and to prove they are serious, they detonate a charge that blows off one hostage's leg. Terrified, another guard explains that they cannot help them because the vault is protected by a time lock that cannot be overridden. Michael and Franco decide to handle it themselves. They place explosives on the vault door and manage to break inside. While Michael opens the specific safe they need using a blowtorch, Franco hears a message over the radio saying that a police response has been dispatched. This means they now have only 7 minutes to finish the job. Fortunately, the safe opens quickly. The duo grabs the item they came for and rushes out of the building, still dragging their hostages with explosives attached. Nearby, a SWAT team watches the scene unfold. They wait until Michael and Franco drive away from the hostages before opening fire. Both criminals are wounded by the gunfire, but they still manage to escape. To maintain his cover, Franco calls his superior officer and claims that he just heard about the 999 and is on his way to the scene. Back at the abandoned building, a helicopter arrives to transport Marcus to the hospital. After crashing into several more vehicles during his reckless drive, Alan finally reaches the location and immediately checks on Chris. Chris tells him everything that happened. Alan also learns that a SWAT team currently has Louise surrounded. Chris then reveals something important. He had seen Gabe at the bar a few days earlier. Soon after, Franco arrives to assist with the investigation. Alan quickly notices that Franco is limping, which immediately raises his suspicion. Later that evening, Michael meets Irina and hands over the stolen box. Using a key stolen from the bank, Irina opens it. Michael then demands to see his son and begins shouting at her. Her guards react immediately. Michael punches one guard to the ground and rushes to check a nearby car, expecting to find Felix inside. But the car is empty. Another guard attacks him, knocking him down. The man steps on Michael's hand and fires a gunshot close to his ear, temporarily deafening him. Irina calmly admits that she truly wants to kill Michael, but she knows Elena and Felix would never forgive her if she did. Instead, she tells Michael to take the money and leave, warning him that he will never see Felix again. Michael had brought a gift for his son, so Irina reluctantly agrees to give it to Felix as a goodbye present from his father. After Irina and her men drive away, Michael activates the last explosive device, which turns out to be hidden inside the toy. Moments later, Irina's car explodes. As Michael drives away, he passes the burning vehicle to make sure that everyone inside is dead. Meanwhile, at the hospital, another officer tells Chris that Luis was killed by SWAT. Chris later visits the morgue to examine Luis's belongings. Among them, he finds a note with the address of the abandoned building and a specific time, leading him to realize that Luis had been sent there specifically to kill him. Soon afterward, Michael is pulled over by a police car, but the officer turns out to be Franco. Michael tells him that Irina has finally paid them. Franco then reveals that Marcus is still alive, but he promises that he will kill him just like he killed Leah. Without warning, Franco pulls out his gun and shoots Michael 3 times, killing him and taking all the money for himself. The next day, Chris goes to the gang's neighborhood and begins asking questions. Eventually, he learns that Marcus had been seen talking to Luis on the same day Chris was shot. Chris then goes to meet Alan and explains his theory that Marcus had set him up to be killed. Alan agrees that the theory makes sense, but without proof they cannot take action. Later, Alan receives a call informing him that Leah's body has been found. He shares the news with Chris and presents another theory. The 4th member of the robbery team is a corrupt police officer who is eliminating evidence. Alan immediately calls Trina and asks her to check the records to determine which officer discovered Leah's body. Meanwhile, Chris visits the hospital to see Marcus, who is lying unconscious. Chris takes the opportunity to insult him. At that moment, Franco enters the room and tells Chris that he still needs to provide a full statement at the police station. The 2 officers enter an elevator together. While they are riding down, Chris receives a call from Alan, who urgently informs him that Franco is the corrupt officer. Chris pretends the call is from his wife and quickly ends it. When they reach the parking lot, the 2 men split up and walk toward their separate cars. As soon as Franco gets into his vehicle, he notices a tie hanging from the rearview mirror and suddenly sees Alan sitting in the back seat. Both men draw their guns and fire at the same time. Franco dies instantly, while Alan is seriously wounded. Chris hears the gunshots and makes a call while Alan calmly lights a cigarette. The story leaves it unclear whether Alan survives or bleeds out. With that, the story comes to an end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thanks.